Hello and welcome to the Flow Code podcast, where we're dedicated to spreading the ideals of open source development, community collaboration, and engineering innovation. I'm your host, James O'Reilly, a civil structural engineer based in Vancouver, BC, Canada. Our mission is to empower engineers across the globe through a multi-dimensional approach to learning. We dive deep into technical topics, especially Python's potential in civil and structural engineering, alongside broader engineering-focused subjects like soft skills, economics, science, modern technologies, and industry trends. I'm extremely passionate about Python's application in our field, but I want to emphasize that Flowcode's overarching goal is about fostering growth and continuous improvement. So we talk about a lot more than Python on this podcast. Check out the Flowcode newsletter on Substack for more. The links are all in the description. And with that said, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Flowcode podcast. Today, we're going to talk about engineering skills. This is the audio version of article number 33, a discussion on engineering skills, where we're going to explore some ideas, skills, and perspectives that can help growth within the profession. So, I might go on a few side quests during this reading because that's the nature of the audio version of this podcast. It's just loose with nobody telling me what to do, hence the sporadic nature of it all. So the Insight series is a broader look at engineering. We're going to explore some ideas, philosophies, lessons learned. But today we're going to look at key skills for professional engineers, and they might not be the definitive top skills. I think they are important. So I'm going to share what I think are some pivotal skills for engineers. Now, it's important to note that these views are my own and they may not necessarily align with the broader industry consensus. Every engineer has unique experiences and perspectives that they've developed over their own career, and those ideas contribute to a diverse range of valid opinions. So I'm just offering my own viewpoint. We're going to take a look at cross-disciplinary understanding, systems level thinking, adaptability and problem solving, ethical engineering, storytelling and visualization, and then a little bonus skill, managing personalities and conflicts. So all of these skills are more than just theoretical concepts. They're practical tools that can significantly advance your efficacy as an engineer. And I'll talk about a few books during this article. Some books that I really enjoyed. The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. The Feynman Lectures on Physics by Richard Feynman, one of my favorite books ever. I love Richard Feynman. 6 Easy Pieces, another Feynman book, and Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari. That's just a fantastic book about where we all came from, allegedly. Your thoughts and perspectives are valuable, so if you've got something to say about any of this stuff, let me have it in the comments. So let's kick things off with interdisciplinary understanding. So the crux of the message here revolves around the interdisciplinary nature of engineering projects. Professionals in civil, structural, mechanical, geotechnical, and electrical engineering are often highly specialized in their own particular domains. But a broader understanding of how all of these different areas intersect with one another can become pivotal, especially when you're trying to coordinate complex designs. I like to think of it as a Venn diagram where each of these circles represent the different engineering disciplines, and some of them overlap with others, some of them overlap just a little bit, some of them overlap quite a lot, but that's where all of the ambiguity and hence magic tends to occur. Being fluent or even moderately conversant in these overlapping areas offers an edge in managing and orchestrating intricate projects. And that's not just true for engineering, it's true for any type of organization. But a few examples that come to mind are mechanical and structural engineers trying to coordinate on loads for pumps, valves, or support systems for those types of structures. Utilities engineers talking about bridge crossings or lighting for a bridge or telecom services to crossing a bridge. Prefabricated components or anything that's modular or an engineered solution that's being installed into a larger global structure. You get the picture. So the gaps between all of these different specializations and the loosely defined scope that occurs between these specializations, that's where all the challenges are. And that's why cross-disciplinary fluency is crucial, because you have to align these diverse objectives that when you separate them, it's easy to solve these problems. But when they actually intertwine with the work of other teams, those connections can become pretty complex because not everybody understands everybody else's problems. And every project that I've been a part of has reaffirmed this. A broad grasp of the various fields doesn't just add value, it's often the glue that kind of sticks everything together. And more often than not, civil or structural engineers are the ones that are left to pick up the pieces when there are many different disciplines coordinating together. I don't know why that is, but that's the way it is. Next, systems level thinking. So in a past episode, we talked about the parallels between programming and engineering and some viable problem-solving strategies in both. And systems level thinking is another great example of this. Systems level thinking is an analytical approach to understanding complex systems by examining the linkages and the interactions between the components that comprise the entirety of that system. So it's about seeing the big picture rather than just focusing on individual elements in isolation. And some of the key aspects of this include interconnectedness, so recognizing that the changes in one part of a system can have a ripple effect throughout the entire system. Having a holistic perspective, so focusing on the whole system rather than just its individual parts. And contextual awareness, so understanding how some external factor like environmental, social, or an economic impact or an economic element could impact the system. Feedback loops, identifying how actions within the system produce reactions which may influence future actions. A lot of people do a lot of these things intuitively, but I like to think of it just as you're adjusting a lens. At one specific point in time, you're zoomed in, immersed in the intricate details of your design or the specifications or the technical requirements. You're focused on the minutiae, trying to ensure that every aspect of your work is heading in the right direction. But at any given moment, you need to be able to zoom out and shift from a micro to a macro perspective and take in the entire landscape of the project. Like, what exactly is it that we're doing here? I ask myself that question a lot. Why is this shift significant? Because the decisions that you make in those detailed designs don't always exist in isolation. They can ripple throughout a project. For instance, a small change in your design could lead to significant alterations in geometry, which impacts other team members' work, and it could necessitate logistical shifts or even affect procurement timelines. And this is why systems level thinking is so important and why it intersects with interdisciplinary understanding, which we talked about previously. It's about recognizing that your piece of the puzzle is part of a much larger puzzle, a fractal puzzle, if you will. So this constant reframing and moving between the granular details and the overarching project goals, it requires a cognitive flexibility and a broad understanding of engineering principles. Think about who's affected by your decisions, or how do your actions impact the timeline, the budget, and the overall project flow. You got to wear a lot of different hats and understand a lot of different perspectives and just be ready to adjust your approach based on the evolving needs. It's important to appreciate that this skill develops over time as you gain experience, but asking the right questions and keeping these concepts in mind will definitely help to accelerate this process a lot. Next, we're going to talk about adaptability in problem solving. So think about the early stages of a project. Brainstorming sessions begin, conceptual designs are outlined, plans begin to take shape, expectations are formed. Brainstorming and concept design are the best parts of a project for me. I love this stuff. It's where you have true engineering freedom. But then at some point, the shit hits the fan. And the transition from theory to practice often reveals the fluid nature of real-world conditions, because as soon as work actually begins on site, when there's boots on the ground, when you're drilling or digging or constructing or implementing, all sorts of unforeseen challenges arise, and it's in these moments that the ability to pivot becomes invaluable. I think of adaptable problem solving, like, I know it is a skill, but it's also a mindset, and it's about maintaining composure and responsiveness in the face of a new challenge. The key lies in how we interpret and react to changing conditions. Can we remain calm and solution-oriented? Can we extract critical information from evolving scenarios to make an informed decision? I think these are the hallmarks of an effective engineer. And being adaptable also means being resourceful. It involves evaluating the available information and considering various options, because by asking intelligent questions, we can draw additional insights out of situations that will help to guide us towards more informed or nuanced solutions. And the value is immense if you can work towards becoming this type of hypothetical question master. I've always thought of it like just being this sage black belt question master, like the Riddler out of Batman. People that, like, I've always loved people that ask good questions, because they elevate the room and they promote better thinking. Like, I love a good question. And in essence, adaptability in engineering, it's about thriving within constraints, whatever that they may be. It could be anything. And it's about seeing change not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity, as annoying and cliched as that sounds. I don't mean this to be a Tony Robbins seminar, but I think you get the point. This mindset, which it requires rigorous cultivation and willpower, it's definitely not easy. It takes a lot of conscious effort, like you're constantly pushing a giant boulder uphill. But with time and with practice, you can get better at it, and you can deal with challenges and always try to make sure that you're a part of the solution. Next is an interesting one, and probably a legally precarious one, and that is ethical engineering. And it's a broad topic. I will try to do a dedicated episode on ethical engineering, because a lot of stuff falls into this bucket, and many issues are grey areas or philosophical discussions that can be quite polarizing for people. In my own experience working in several countries and jurisdictions, while ethical considerations are universally acknowledged as crucial, they often need to receive extra emphasis during project execution. And I know that this is easy to say, but the world is a complicated place, and in reality there is often a layer of financial or legal abstraction between the words in a contract and real-world application. Ultimately, everything hinges on the context of the local culture, the project's budget, and regulatory requirements. It's very easy to whine about this kind of stuff as a backseat driver, and I don't have a master plan or a clean solution other than to just try your best to be vocal about issues that you encounter in the most productive manner possible, and just to offer viable solutions or alternatives where you can. There are many different topics to consider under the ethical engineering umbrella and many deep dives to be had. But one aspect of my industry that I find extremely interesting is First Nations engagement and partnerships. This is a huge focus here in British Columbia in Canada. So for subscribers or listeners in other parts of the world, the First Nations people in Canada refer to the diverse groups of Indigenous peoples who are the original inhabitants of the land that is now Canada. And there are over 600 recognised First Nations governments or bands across Canada. It's been a fascinating journey for me, an Irish immigrant, because I moved here after university in 2010. But for me to observe from the outside the complex interactions of the First Nations communities with the federal and provincial governments, it's a very, very interesting process. And given the history and the politics, there's so much to unpack here, and it's definitely not my area of expertise, but from a purely sociological and personal learning perspective, there's a lot of very interesting and valuable discussions to be had. The reality that we all face is that any professionals that are involved in large-scale projects often face compartmentalization and time constraints, which make it very challenging to engage fully with these kinds of complicated, multifaceted aspects of ethical engineering. And very few clients are willing to pay to philosophize or ponder on these topics. It's a very difficult thing to nail down. And navigating these complex and bureaucratic regulatory environments, it's a constant challenge for me in my work. And these regulations, they can significantly impact project timelines and execution strategies. And for energy projects, which is my neck of the woods, whether it's wind, solar, hydro, nuclear, thermal, they all require a very careful balance between the societal power needs and the environmental impacts. But there has been a recent push to modernize this process. I'll share a link on a recent push in the US related to the importance of streamlining hydropower licensing. Whether or not it has any effect, I don't know. But this balance is not just a technical challenge, but an ethical one, highlighting the need for engineers to consider the broader implications of their work. And I'm still not sure where we're supposed to find the time or the budget to consider all these things, but it is a professional obligation, so make of that what you will. Storytelling and visualization. This is the next section. Effective communication, particularly through storytelling and visuals, shapes project outcomes and guides stakeholder decisions. Communication's about transmitting ideas and concepts. I really like this quote from Yuval Harari from his book Sapiens. Our language allows us to share information about objects, events, and ideas that are not present at the moment. That was a bit of a mind bender for me when I read that first. Even though it's obvious, it's hilariously obvious, but it's still a cool thing to think about. Throughout my career, I've encountered communicators of all stripes. Some have been exceptionally clear and concise that provide value and insight with every word spoken. Elite communication skills are both impressive and impactful, whether it's through articulating a problem, offering a solution, or eliciting valuable responses through sharp, insightful questioning. Such individuals understand the power of clear, concise updates and instructions. It's a game changer. And one of my heroes, who I mentioned earlier on, Richard Feynman, is a master of this. His ability to distill complex concepts into various branches of physics into simple, understandable explanations is inspiring. So I highly recommend digging into his work if you're interested in physics and the nature of reality. There's also some fantastic clips of him explaining stuff on YouTube that are just a joy to watch. For me, Receiving clear instructions is like a breath of fresh air. It gives me a clear direction, allows me to dive straight into the task at hand. In contrast, vague or poorly communicated instructions can be a real headache. And this is particularly true in engineering, where project requirements often have a degree of intentional ambiguity. And I kind of want to be careful how I phrase this, but we're frequently walking a tightrope where we're trying to balance general criteria with specific project needs, and there's not always a clear-cut path to follow. That's why people pay us. Sometimes an owner or a client is still determining what they want, so it takes some creative reasoning and preparation to get everything outlined in an actionable plan that aligns with their objectives. And this ambiguity can often lead to some engineering freestyling, as I like to call it. And in these situations, the ability to communicate effectively becomes even more critical, and the skill of storytelling and visualization helps immensely here. Visualization in particular is a tool that I value, and I think of it as painting a picture in the mind's eye, helping others to see and understand complex concepts or problems. The ability to do this effectively can significantly enhance understanding and collaboration in a project. Your effectiveness as an engineer is only as strong as your ability to communicate it. Okay, we're nearly there. We're getting to the last one now. Managing personalities or conflict. If you're a human being listening to this, you will inevitably run into personality clashes and people that frustrate the living daylights out of you. These are individuals that may make the veins in your temple pulse so violently it's like they're drumming for Metallica. Maybe you're a jaw clencher, determined to powderize your molars. This is the nature of being human. Everybody has an arch nemesis out there, and everything that particular arch nemesis says can elicit some sort of primal reaction that may convince you that it's the stupidest thing you've ever heard. You might have even white-knuckled your way through this entire article despite me being that very person. So if you're still here, I truly appreciate it. I know it's not easy. Navigating personality clashes and conflicts in the workplace can be a real challenge, and everyone has their fair share of war stories, including me, but I'm not going to dig into those today. Generally, my strategy is to take a step back and try to see the bigger picture, because often I find that the person causing friction is typically under significant stress themselves, and it's like they're the main character in their own intense Brazilian soap opera. And apologies to any of the Brazilians out there listening, but you guys have been by far my most dramatic friend demographic by at least 10x. But anyway, I try to avoid taking things personally, which is a lot easier said than done, but losing your cool in a professional environment very rarely ends well. And of course, there are times when confrontation or a reality check is necessary, but I approach these situations with extreme caution. It's about finding the balance between standing your ground, which is important, and also maintaining professional decorum. And the arts of negotiation, de-escalation, and diffusing are all in this bucket, and they warrant some consideration so that you're ready, if required, to step into the ring. For some reason, I just get like a mental image of Samuel L. Jackson as a hostage negotiator when I read that. So if that does help you keep your cool in those sorts of situations, I highly recommend doing that. Just imagine yourself as Samuel L. Jackson trying to cool people off. In the very worst of cases, I also recommend clocking up some time on the mats in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because it will A, help blow off some steam, B, give you the tools to fold your mortal enemies into pretzels, or as some people say, fold people's clothes while they're still in them. This is a joke. Obviously, I'm not suggesting you do this. Okay, now that's about it for today's episode. We're going to wrap it up. So let's quickly revisit the skill list. We looked at cross-disciplinary understanding, system-level thinking, adaptability and problem solving, ethical engineering, storytelling and visualization, and finally managing personalities and conflict. Glad to have you on board. If you want to discover more about how Flowcode can enhance your engineering toolkit, come and visit us at flowcode.dev and stay up to date with everything through the newsletter. I'll see you guys in the next one. I am moments away from a new baby. My wife is at home going insane because she can't control the timelines, but this baby's going to come when she's going to come, and we're going to be ready, and we're going to suffer through the next couple of months of no sleeping. Well, not that there's going to be no sleeping, there will be some intermittent sleep. So I beg your forgiveness for the impending barrage of grammatical errors, spelling errors, and inconsistencies with the content that I produce. Hopefully, you can forgive me. Talk to you guys soon, and be good out there. Keep innovating. I will see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to the Flowcode podcast. For deeper dives, please visit flowcode.dev and make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter to stay in the loop on new content. And don't worry, we don't do spam. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have thoughts, questions, or ideas, get in touch. I'm James O'Reilly. Keep innovating, and I'll see you in the next episode.